Guten Abend allerseits. Freut mich, dass ihr da seid, dass Sie da sind. Und ich möchte nur ganz kurz ein paar Personen nennen, bei denen ich mich bedanken möchte, die das unterstützen und mithelfen. Also fast alle, die da sind, wissen das schon, dass die l-x-Serie eine Vortragsreihe ist in Zusammenarbeit von dem Institut für Landschaftsarchitektur, der BOKU, mit der ÖGLA. Und dementsprechend sind etliche Personen auch involviert an diesen beiden Stellen. Dominik Rosner steht da hinten, der hat uns diesmal ganz besonders unterstützt, sowohl bei der Aussendung und der Öffentlichkeitsarbeit als auch bei der Technik, und er nimmt es auch auf. Und obwohl ihr jetzt alle da seid und es eigentlich für die wichtig wäre, die nicht da sind, es wird nämlich nicht live übertragen. Aber wir nehmen es auf, und wenn ihr das verbreiten möchtet, es wird dann auf der Homepage nachschaubar sein. Und von der ÖGLA ist Konstantin Heidler da auch. Da ist er, genau, danke auch. Und wir haben mehrere Termine, und diese Serie ist an 2 verschiedenen Orten. Die Gründe sind im Moment unwichtig. Es sind 2 Dinge wichtig. Nächstes Mal fängt es eine halbe Stunde später an und ist hier. Und dann die zweite Hälfte ist dann im Depot um 19 Uhr jeweils. Nur, dass das alle wissen. Und die Termine sind am 14.11., am 21.11. kommt Robin Winogrand, dann Daniel Bauer am 5.11., 5.12. Das ist eh klar, weil der 5.11. ist schon vorbei. Dann der 12.12. kommt Madeleine Accarin von Wagon Landscapes. Das wissen, glaube ich, die meisten. Und jetzt, for the record, a little introduction to this year's topic. It's, as you know, the series is about bringing international people, landscape architects here to talk about their projects, to have some insights and some basis for the discourse and the further development of the Austrian landscape architecture as well, although there is a lot of good things going on in Vienna as well and in Austria too. But it's always good to have some input from abroad and from outside. And I would like to talk very, very briefly about this many reuse, recycle, reinterpret, because of course this is a topic, it's at the core of every debate at the moment, be it architecture, urbanism or landscape. And as we face all those challenges of scarce resources, and not only in terms of space but also in terms of materials and other things, it is a necessity, of course, and there are quite a few people in landscape architecture who think that it is somehow a sustainable profession by nature, which I don't think it is, and I do think we have to take a closer look of how we achieve not only all the necessities of the time in terms of climate and all these other things, but also still keep up a cultural expression and also try to find aesthetics ways with a high quality of aesthetics. And that brings me to our speaker of today, Kamille. She is from the studio BOGL. Thank you very much for coming here. She came from Copenhagen today. And we'll talk about projects of BOGL, who are a true Scandinavian office with one office in Copenhagen and one in Oslo. So both is Scandinavia. And you probably have crossed their name before, because there are a few things that have happened recently. One is that they won a competition in Vienna for the Zentralpark Gasometer Vorfeld, which is only going to be realized beginning from 2026, as I read. That's one thing. And the other thing is that they have won the jury award of the Lands in 2024 award. And this is probably also quite well communicated through social media and other things. Kamille herself studied both in Berlin and in Copenhagen, where she graduated in 2017 from the University of Copenhagen in landscape architecture. She hooked on to BOGL before that already because she was there as an intern, and then passed through Feld Landscape back to BOGL, where she was one of the key developers from a very tiny office, tiny in terms of Scandinavian scale, 5 to 35 people at the moment. So I think it's a very good example of how the enlargement of the team can also add to the quality of the designers and the design itself. And it's from this position that Kamille will talk to us, and I give the floor to you. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you. So I also wanted to say thank you for inviting me and inviting BOGL to come. I've been looking forward to share with you all how we approach the sites and the different projects. And I'm a bit nervous, but I guess it'll pass as it has to, because it's the projects that we're going to talk about. And we're Scandinavian practice working mainly in Scandinavia, but are really happy to cross borders more and more these recent years, especially with Gasometer right now. We are 35 people across Copenhagen and Oslo with a lot of mainly landscape architects, urban planners, mobility planners, a light designer. And the office is 16 years today and has expanded a lot. We work a lot with cultural sites, museums, historical sites, but mainly still do large public squares, public parks, waterfronts. And then, of course, as every landscape architecture office, we work more and more with cloudburst plans, storm surge plans, biodiversity, reducing CO2 emissions, and reusing materials. And I need to have some water. So of course we work very strictly with the climate topic, and we often work with these large explicit Excel sheets, LCA calculations, and has several DG&B consultants in the office. But what is at the core understanding of the office is really that the most important thing we can do, and what we always have to start with, is to see what is already there. It's super banal, super obvious, but we really have to look very closely at what materials are at the site, which structures are standing, what species, plants, people are living there, and what stories has taken place. And then take those learnings very seriously, let them create the foundation for the future change. And we believe that that is how we create the most sustainable projects. And then obviously, and banal as it is, do as little as possible, but as much as needed. And it's obvious, but also very easy to forget when you sit with the projects and you're just eager to do more and more and more. You really have to remember what can you cut off. And that is very much at the core when we work in the Norwegian landscape. We're very happy to be part of this framework with the Norwegian Scenic Routes. It's a program that makes small viewpoints and parking lots along the most scenic routes in the Norwegian nature. And here everything is already there. The point is really to do a minimal intervention to just let people experience this very dramatic landscape, guide them to the viewpoint without even noticing a landscape architect was ever here. So this proposal consists of just 3 parking lots, rearranging some of the existing stones of the site, and then adding this very thin steel railing that guides you along the border of the cliff and to the viewpoint. The railing is already present in the area. As you see, that's just like a narrative we just continue onto. So we really tried to do, and the drama of the landscape is real. We have nothing like this in Denmark at all. So the point was to do as subtle an intervention as possible and really make sure no one even noticed we were there. The point was to let nature really guide the way and play the main role. And this is what we would love to do always in every project if possible. But especially in a Danish context, it almost never is, right? In Denmark, we have a highly urbanized country with agricultural fields all over. But if we do look very closely and pay attention, we'll find that a lot of stories are already taking place right under the surface. Am I speaking too fast? Okay. A few years back, I think maybe 4 years back, there was a competition in this old market town in the northern part of Denmark to reopen an old passage and connect all the squares in the town. And it had already, from the beginning, been politically decided to tear down this old blacksmith and a lot of the houses so we could create a big open urban space in the center. But walking from the main street into this old passage, everything changed immediately. Also, the pace kind of went down, the smells changed, the sounds, the intimacy, everything was just different. You could feel it in your body, your heartbeat kind of slowed down. And all the structures were already there. It was a collage, you can see a collage of all the facades, the materials, and it was just like all these stories were just waiting to be told. So we couldn't help but fall in love immediately when we came there. It was impossible not to. So we said we need to keep all these structures. The competition says differently, but everything that this area has to offer is here, and by taking it down, we lose the essence of it. So what we need to do, we need to keep all the structures, let them land very clearly on this new surface, and clean up in the existing materials on the floor, because all the cobblestones had been covered by asphalt. And then we said, the old blacksmith, we need to transform it. The cobblestones, we need to re-establish them. That's the material of all these old passages. We need to keep the buildings. There used to be an old stream. We need to reinterpret that into new water elements. And then in the ground, in the soil, in this entire area is limestone. So this is what we can use. This is what we can add that is already in the area to create a walkway that is accessible for everyone. It meant that the overall layout of the site was, this is of course from the competition, but was almost exactly like it was before. The only thing we did was we took down a little part of this garage so you could enter into the smithy. We gave it a new roof that was transparent, and we opened it up here and here so you could still pass down across this square through the area and north. And it meant, as you see in this little exo, that all this intimacy, all the microclimate, the small scale was kept in the area. It also meant that we got this whole mix of inside, outside always, and being able to activate all these smaller spaces. And we considered this new smithy like a covered urban space. So we added a kitchen, and we put a pizza oven in the chimney and made it an informal communal square. So this is what it looks like today. And I would argue that it's almost a little bit like the Norwegian tourist route. It doesn't look like a project. It looks, we can argue about that, but what we wanted to do was something very subtle, very integrated, that really played with what the materials already there. We added a few benches. We gave him, the guy owning the antique store, a bigger window so you could see his books. And on the other side there was this old horse stable. He got a window to exhibit more books now that we took part of his garage. We added another little bench and made this accessible limestone border all around. Here you see the two of the openings into the smithy that also got this limestone floor and this very obviously new roof. We had to do a new roof in order to get the sun down and to make it light and airy and not seem like a dodgy place. But also we thought it was quite honest to do something obviously new when it was added onto. This used to be a small garden that belonged to the building over here, which was also supposed to be torn down in order to create this big square. And we said it should still be a garden, but in a more urban context and really connected to the smithy. Here you see the long tables and the kitchen in the back and the old chimney. And a little water fountain that was like the reinterpretation of this stream that was going through the area before. We couldn't re-establish that because it was, I think, in a pipe 3 meters below surface, so it would be very expensive in terms of pumping the water up again. So what we really tried in this space was to show, really be honest towards the stories of the site, but also to show very much respect, but also care for all the existing structures and the materials, and to try and make an effort into what is it then we're adding and how are we detailing it, how are we really treating the material. So that everything we put into the project, like the limestone wasn't there before, but we really wanted it to be integrated and not placed from above. It was also a project where we felt very confident that the stories of this site was the microclimate, the atmosphere, this smithy, the cobblestones and the limestone. So if everything is taken from the project, if you still have the limestone and the cobblestone and the smithy, the whole project still stands. Like you could cut away everything else. And today it functions as this space. This is our office on a study trip, having a long table dinner using the pizza oven. And in the municipality they have tango classes here. They have Argentinian people coming here to dance tango. They have poetry readings, and you can also just rent it for like a family gathering if you want to. We used, it was kind of the same approach in a completely different scale, completely different setting and phase when we approached this Refshaleøen, which is outside Copenhagen. It's this big site that used to house large boat buildings, so it's very well known for all the historical buildings. The creative class has really moved here, and there's like the hippest bakeries, food trucks, everything is really going on this site. But now they are making a large structure plan competition in order to fill this up with housing, build it super densely. And before they do this whole structure plan competition, they wanted an open competition where people could just bring their ideas, like what should we consider when we start planning. So I would argue that we used the exact same approach. This place is very touristed. It's super local for a lot of people living in the area, but also for all the species in the area. What you don't see immediately is that you actually have a lot of insects, birds and animals living here in very good conditions. My voice keeps staying up here. So we have some very good friends who are biologists, and we really enjoy working with them because they are very good at mapping out endangered species and kind of arguing which ones should we really focus on in order to create better habitats for those, but also to get more species to the area. So they mapped out all the biocorridors of Copenhagen and where there were missing links, and then found these 4 species, endangered species on Refshaleøen, like a butterfly, 2 different butterflies, an eel, and then this little green toad, which is super cool because it can swim in salt water, which is quite special for a frog. And it's already south of the area here in Amager Strand Park. It's already north of the area. So by really adding to the biocorridor and the habitat of this toad, it could be able to move all along the coast of Copenhagen. So of course we thought this is major important, and this is something you would never plan for to begin with. And by working with the specific habitats of these endangered species, by enhancing them and selecting carefully all the plants that they need, we would also be able to attract all these other species to the site. So here we really try to turn the design process upside down, saying, obviously we need to keep all the cultural historical buildings on site. That's the first plan. But secondary, we really need to keep and enhance all the habitats, and then after that we can place the buildings where we then have the space. And hopefully this will create a much more livable area in the future, especially for all the species on the site. Yeah, a section showing how, like what kind of habitats all these 4 different species needs. But it's not always often that we have so much to, like we have so many stories to really find on the site. Like often as landscape architects, we're given a classic courtyard with asphalt, trash cans and bicycles. And what do we do? So what do we then do? And here this courtyard was chosen to be a pilot project, saying in Copenhagen, this is a classic way of, in the old Copenhagen, this is a classic way of building with having all these courtyards, and combining that with the really threats of all the cloudbursts. What is the potential of the courtyards in this kind of notion? Because it was a pilot project, we also really needed to rethink the social aspect, like what did the courtyards used to be before? This is where you met all your neighbors, where all the life took place. And it isn't really in this context anymore. So because there wasn't anything to really add on to, we went to the municipality's material storage. I don't know if you have it in Vienna, but in Denmark and in Copenhagen especially, the municipalities have to, whenever a project is done or is changed because a new project comes, they have to take up all the material and put them in a storage. And because they were the client here, we could go there and start to map out what do you actually have. Like, how could we use those windows? What kind of nice, robust Nordic materials do we have? And then kind of map out how can we use this in a new expression. And that became this edge zone along the borders of the housing, where the old skiffer and the cobblestones, and then granite, which was obviously new, became this edge zone for the semi-private life. The courtyard was also very much about the water and how can the water become a resource. So the entire central space of the courtyard was could potentially collect all the water. But we also quite fast found that in order for the water to really be a resource, not just something that was dealt with, it had to be permanent. So we established this permanent lake with the first biological cleansing of the water through the filter soil, pumping it through the courtyard, and allowing it to be this installation or this water play that was also always present. What we really learned from this project is that in order to reuse materials that is taken from a place that people left and didn't want to use anymore, you have to really make an effort into making it something special, really working with what kind of expression is it that we are going to get from this, how can we show them that they're actually getting something better than there was before. But what you also see in this project, it's also a few years old, is a lot of concrete. So had we done this project yesterday or last year or today, we would never use concrete in this way with all these steps. It's not necessary. It was necessary for the experience and how to use it, but now we have like a no concrete policy, so of course it wouldn't look like this today. Also saying like every I want to say every year, but it's like every month we get more and more clever. What can we do? What can we use? Where do we need to be more and more consequent? Also, a lot of the projects we have to do are temporary. And here the objective is very different, right? A temporary project has to really, it cannot be subtle and calmly integrated into the fabric. You make a temporary project in order to kind of make a point, make an impact, and often they're very noisy and all over the place. And they're temporary, so you add them and you take them away quickly again. So absolutely not very sustainable. And this is in one of Denmark's largest towns, Odense. They have this shopping street, but all the shops are closing. Like internet trade, like you shop on the internet, you go to the big malls. So this little town is completely dying, and all the crosses there are closed shops. So it's a very sad experience. Mapping those out together with where you actually had the outdoor servings, where you had the fire trucks, where you had the accessible routes, we found that on this street we could only make 5 interventions. That's the crossing in this side. And the objective was to say, okay, if we're not going to go into the old market towns to make our main shopping, then what is it the market towns is going to offer us in the future? Because it's not based on commercial experiences. So we created these gardens of curiosities, we call them, saying, okay, it needs to be projects where we work with the spatial, the atmospheric, the playful experiences that you wouldn't expect, and create these little secret experiences along the route, or little gems. But here we also started at the material deposit, storage of the municipality. So before we created the gardens, we actually went there to see what do you have and how can we, so we don't build anything new, and that we give it back to a place for other people to use it. So we fell in love with these concrete walls. We thought we have to use them for something. Then we also found these very long steel beams from an old bridge. And we said, okay, we're going to color them. We promised the storage guys that we would take off the paint once the project is done. And then those were some of the things we used. This for an enclosed garden, and here just for the border of the gardens, because we also couldn't take up the pavement. Everything has to be left once the project is over, as we found it. And this is actually where the whole idea of the garden started, because we found these beams that was protecting they used to protect the new plantings, and they were just so, I don't know, we were really inspired by them. And this town, Odense, is also where H.C. Andersen, the fairy tale author, grew up. So we thought there was something with the fairy tale. And also the trash cans together with this. So they became this labyrinth garden, where we also tried, instead of just making it look like trash cans, we tried to do something different, something unexpected, something that caught your eye without being completely yellow. This was the idea of the enclosed garden that would offer you a little break from the everyday. And it's fun just to see how people start to use those spaces that they don't expect. It just becomes like a little tiny break when you walk through the city. And then we had this flower garden. And it was really the point not to make it subtle and not unnoticeable, because it was a temporary project. It was really important. It didn't look temporary. It didn't look very cheap, but it looked like someone actually cared, both in what kind of experience does it offer, but also in the attention to detail, like how do the benches look and everything. And then the final project I'm going to share is the Gasometer Vorfeld, the park that we are going to do here in Vienna, where we also felt super lucky, first of all, to even be invited, and then very proud to have won it. And you probably all know the site even better than me. Of course, I've been there a few times, but we are by the 4 gasometers. And again, coming here, it was completely impossible not to fall in love. Like, the site is super complex. It's filled with private houses, commercial buildings, horse stables, abandoned buildings, small private houses, a car mechanic something, and then just 1,000 fences. Like, the entire area is fenced off all over, and you have these little, what do you call them, nisser, havenisser. You have these little pottery things of men with red hats, and then you have these bigger open stretch, and yeah, dwarfs. And then you have like really large, beautiful walnut trees all over the site. So it just felt like a treasure hunt going into this area. And we said, okay, now it's 2024. Everything we learned, this is in spring, so already now we know more. But we need to be even more consequent than ever before. So we made this treasure map, mapping out all the structures and buildings with high quality, the communal gardens, the horse stables, the smaller, we call them the French houses, all the large walnut trees, and say we need to keep this. Either we keep the structure, we keep the foundation, we keep the entire building. But we cannot take them away and create a park where there was this very heavily paved area, maybe even polluted area. That is where we need to have that's where we need to have the structures. And then because everything was so complicated with the fences, all the different ownerships, we say we need to add a very strong landscape element to create a clear hierarchy. So we said we wanted to have this very big opening at the center of the park, allowing you to have the big views of the gasometer and throughout, and then having a more dense border along, really densifying, giving you a feeling you're inside a park. And then we wanted to create like some very precise cuts into these that work with the new interventions of the site. So for example, here we have these abandoned houses down here where we say this can be this more intimate garden and communal space. We have an old commercial building as well here that could be a new cafe. We have the horse stables that could be a sports area by keeping the surface, keeping the roof. And then because we do need to create an understanding that this is one big park and one gathered space, we're going to add this big path, taking you from the railways here all the way through the park and kind of connecting everything. And that is actually the only new thing we are adding. Of course, that would be obvious to do in concrete. Like, how do you make such a large path in a like accessible material, really gathering everything, being able to move? That is going to be our next thing of investigation, because we said we cannot use concrete. So that's a really nice challenge we gave ourselves. By keeping all of these structures, it also means that we are already given a lot of intimate spaces, a lot of spaces with a lot of stories that we can add on to. As you see here. And here you see the entry space from south and how you always have the gasometers present and with this big path in the center. And here you have the horse stables as they are today, a beautiful space, but the object was also to really do a lot of sport facilities, and we said they have to be located where we already have the paved areas. So here we would just take the existing roof, lift it up, and then keep the ground for the sports. So what we really try in the office is to be more and more consequent, is to really be true to the inherent stories of the site, to show curiosity, respect, and care, and really make an effort and paying attention to detail. It also means that each project looked very different, and it was a point when choosing the projects showing you today that we don't really have a BOGL stamp, and I think that's something we're quite proud of. Like, each project is allowed to be its own in terms of the appearance and aesthetics, but I hope what shines through is this attention to detail and care. And I think that is maybe the most important, that is the most important task for us as landscape architects, is really because we are designers, we shape spaces, we create images of projects, atmospheres, and sites. So we really need to work with aesthetics. Aesthetics has the power to move us, to touch us. we work with the places where people's lives take place, where their memories are taking place. So we really need to make an effort. So in this time of despair, where the world is burning, I really believe that the hope is within us as sensing beings, so we can evoke our ethics and take action.
Thanks a lot for the insight into your office and to your projects of very different scales and also different types. I'm sure there are some questions to be asked. I was wondering, I always start because the audience needs some time. I was wondering whether when you saw the brief for the competition in Vienna, and compare it to briefs which you're used to in Scandinavia, concerning the program, is it similar? Or because we always feel that in Vienna it's too much program we have to put into too small spaces. Is that what you experience in Denmark as well? Or was it normal for you to do it, or was it different?
I think the first thing that was really different is the fact that you already had a plan for the entire park. There was a plan for the park of how they actually wanted it to be, and they had like, where should the different programs be, where should the path be, how should the trees actually be laid out, and that was very different from a Copenhagen brief. And we just said, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to do it our own way. So we have to kind of look away from that and just say, what do we believe is right for this site? Yeah.
So it is different.
It is different, yes.
So this was a great discussion in the jury.
Okay. Yeah.
Anything you would like to add or ask?
So what did you use instead of concrete in the gasometer park?
We haven't decided yet. It's yet to be decided.
2 years of thinking about it.
Yeah, because we have to have high accessibility. We have to have a path that is wide enough that you can both walk through the site, you can go on your roller skates, you can maybe even bike through the park. In Denmark, in some municipalities, they allow gravel, like very hardly gravel, but other places it's not considered accessible. Would it then be asphalt? We also considered, should it be red asphalt? That's still very much associated with roads and a material of lower value. Then of course we have all the gasometers with the beautiful red bricks, and in Denmark we really have a strong tradition of using bricks in the pavement, but also it has difficulties with it becomes too slippery. How are the in between the tiles, how wide are they? Will you go like this? It's also super expensive. It's also a park that's very much focused on, again, as little as possible and not just blowing the budget on a path. Yeah. But it pushes us into thinking, what could it actually be, right? We also have a lot of buildings that are being, a lot of walls that are still being demolished. Could that be used in the remake of a path? Yeah. So I don't have the answer yet.
I mean, apart from the fact that you have a very good storage of materials, obviously, it seems that you put quite a lot of time into the site analysis, into the inventory and the site analysis. And is that something which you have done always, or which is a concrete plan of yours, or is it?
And so it's become something we're very much aware of, but it was always, I was with the office since we were only 5 people in the office, and since more than 11 years. And always this has been like the way to start is really to look at what is there. You have to go to the site, you have to really be there, trust your intuition and feel what is going on. So, and then we do spend, like when we map out a competition phase, we do spend the first third of the competition just doing analysis, studies, and going to the sites before we really start designing. Yeah. So yes.
Within the analysis, you said like at this one project that was very outstanding, creating like these different habitats. How often do you actually work with your friends or the biology friends in the
Also now we try to incorporate them every time, because always there's species to be found on the different sites, and sometimes you can do very little in order to enhance their biotopes. So it becomes more and more like an integrated part of the project. Yeah.
How important is the diversity in your office, in your team, by the education? Because I think you are not just landscape architects in your office, right?
No, I think we don't have like a goal to say we want to have all these different professions. We simply just this sounds very present. We tried to hire like a building constructor for doing when we did the smithy, but we found that okay, we really want to do it ourselves, and maybe we need to collaborate with some external who can calculate stuff, but the very design of it we want to investigate ourselves. So we have mainly landscape architects, we have a few architects, urban planners, mobility planners, and a light designer. But if you come to the office with great, like eager enthusiasm and ambition, we'll find a place, and then it doesn't really matter. No, but it is actually true. Also, yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
And when you said that 3 years ago you used concrete and now you're saying like this is what you don't need anymore, what would you say in 3 years is the learning of now? Like what's the learning of the future?
Also already now, we just did a competition also in this little town of Tisted, where they had this big square and they wanted to redo it. It was like worn down, it wasn't really working spatially, and they had this very expressive design in the pavement that for sure it was done in 2008. And had we done that competition a few years back, we would have changed the pavement in order to make like a more beautiful pavement, and of course change the square. But already now we're seeing, okay, we cannot do this. The pavement, it's functioning, it's robust, it's maybe not the most beautiful layout, but how can we argue to take it up when it's actually there and working? So I think I think our learnings in the future is being much more consequent into what changes are we even making? Like when are we even doing anything different? And that was maybe also in the program for the gasometer park that we found it was the layout of from the brief was a very classical park. It wasn't really. And now I should be
There's
careful.
nobody here. You can speak out.
No, but it was very much a tabula rasa kind of, we want a big park, it should look like this, not really paying attention to what is already there. And I think we have to be much more consequent already now. So I think maybe also, are we even going to do this project? And we are trying to be more and more precise when choosing projects, like with a clear conscience, can we do a project here when so much is already going on that works? So why do we just want a whole new layout of it? Yeah.
So it's about making use of what is there rather than reusing it,
Yes.
or both, perhaps.
Yes, as a more and more just leaving it. Yeah.
You were talking about how every project, that was what we went before, but also you mentioned it in your talk, that you learn from every project and that you develop new ideas or new insights from every realized project you have achieved. And I wonder how you do that. Is there an analysis? Do you sit together? Do you is there some critical moment where you invite people, or how do you do it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's also about spending time, because of course, I guess many people would like to have more time for inventory and more time for analysis and reflection, but still you have to organize it in a way, or do you organize it in a way?
And so we do have an overall organization of the office that really takes this into consideration. I think it was 6 years ago, we said, okay, maybe I'm mainly doing the competitions. And then slowly we got a whole team around. We call it like the development team, and we are really the ones. If a new project comes, we are the ones doing it. And then we have a lot of other teams who are more doing the larger, like the planning, like the detailing projects with a larger scope. And in this smaller team that we have, which is very close to our creative director as well, we all the time kind of reflect like, what did we learn from this? Did we really do the right thing here? Like, how can we approach this next assignment? Hey, did you hear about this competition that's coming? That would be interesting in this kind of aspect. So we're very vocal about it, and we really allow ourselves to not just like, good job, but really say, did we do the right thing in this project, and how can we do better? So we have this team where it's like, I think we end up doing 40 projects a year in this tiny team, and then the other teams more have maybe 2 or 3 projects that are very long term. But that also becomes a space for like a lot of reflection.
It will be interesting to read about your lessons learned. I think you should perhaps publish it.
Is that a critique of mine?
Pardon? What?
That was a critique of the presentation.
No, why?
Sorry.
Okay, is there anything else before the beer? Or anything, any other drink?
I don't have a question, but that gives me. It's very interesting because your office, your project brings joy in a way. For me, I don't know if anybody feels the same, but I think it's kind of connecting your projects. I can feel that it makes you joy to do the things, and it's also see. I have the feeling that you have 1000% of care of what you're doing in this place. So this is kind of, I had the chance to see, to watch and visit some of your projects, and some things I don't really understand sometimes, and I don't feel about the design. Maybe something a little bit different could be done, but it's the joy and the care which is, I think, one of the best things, a good answer, the best answer for our situation right now in the world. So it's a pleasure always.
Thank you.
And I get the feeling of joy also by seeing pictures of your project. So this is something.
Thank you.
Not to use. This happens not too often by watching to see some pictures of projects. So it's I feel very, and it's an honor to have you here in Vienna as well. So
okay, no.
You have to.
You have to fight.
Bomb the Vienna. So it's good to.
I think that's wonderful.
Welcome in our battlefield.
Thank you.
Oh, well, that was a perfect concluding remark.
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing your projects with us. Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you next week when Robin Winogrand will start at 19:30. And let's perhaps have a drink. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.